Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, October 24th, 2022. I'm your host, Tristan. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Everybody out in chat land. Howdy-ho. Yeah, my name's Tristan. I am the host of Step Back, stepbackhistory.com, and I'm also the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. Yeah. I stream on Mondays at noon, life permitting, I guess. And if you want to keep this work going, I have a bunch of things that you can help out with. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/stepbackhistory, where every for 84 cents a month, you get videos early with bonus content and no ads. You also get a special Q&A post that I do to fuel YouTube Shorts every Monday. Very fun stuff. I tried to make my Patreon the highest value at the lowest tier that you can get. I want it to feel like a really good deal, even if it's just $1. Of course, you got things like also if you have Amazon Prime, Twitch has a thing where if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime subscription every month. If you choose Step Back, I'd be very grateful to have it for a month because it really helps me, do things like pay bills, like school or not school, like my mortgage and like my second mortgage, which is apparently going to be how much daycare is going to cost, that kind of thing. Did Canada have its Thanksgiving yet? If so, how was it? Yeah, we had it. It was about 2 weeks ago. It was all right. It was we don't make as big a deal of it as the Americans do, but still pretty good. Yeah. Also, other things that if you have a little bit of extra cash and you don't mind spending it, things like channel memberships, super chats, bits, and Twitch subscriptions are all welcome and appreciated. But of course, never necessary. As far as content coming down the pike comes, my latest video was about the assassination of President James Garfield. And that one people seem to have liked. And anyway, but on my next video, which comes out right after this stream is over, so at 2 p.m., right after this stream, will be the release of my next video, which is going to be on it's going to be part 2 of my Russia series. So if that's a thing you want to watch, it'll be there in just a minute. Yeah. Also, if you want to submit and then the next video after that I'm working on is about Y2K, which I'm kind of excited for. All right, and if you want to submit a question for a future stream or for this stream, I haven't looked at my question data bank yet today because baby kept me very busy right up until about literally at 11:50. I was in my dining room with a baby, trying to get him to eat baby goop because he wasn't really wanting to eat anything. So I was trying to get him to eat his mashed mango paste or whatever. Anyways, link in the chat there gets things through. You could do all that. So getting questions in to keep the stream going. Of course, there's no Mia today, so I'm going to rely a lot more on your guys' questions and feedback to sort of keep the show running. And of course, if there's any new people in the chat today, please make yourself known. Say hello, because we have a really awesome and supportive chat community that now, if you are in Twitch or YouTube, you get posts from the other side, so you guys can talk to each other now. So, unified chat experience. Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. The computer froze for a second, and I was like, oh no, what the hell? All right, now What's going on with the chat? Yeah, I had a stream hiccup. Yeah, that was my computer having a little mild angina attack. I don't know what the hell happened, but it froze for a second. Whoa. So, hello from Sweden. Hello. Alrighty, well. Hopefully everybody's had a good weekend, enjoyed themselves, did something to relieve stress. I had an insane weekend through various different things. I just had a bunch of different parts of my life decided to all smash into each other in one weekend, which in some ways was good and in some ways was exhausting. Cause let's see. I had to do, let's see. I had to do a medical thing. So I had to do a medical thing. I had my mother-in-law visiting. I had a meetup with my friend who was convocating this weekend, and his parents were in town and they wanted to see the baby. And like all of that happened in and also the RimWorld expansion. So it's like, and then yeah, tonight or right after the stream is over, actually, I'm going to be going to go and do voting in the municipal election, which seems like it's basically the only point of doing it this time is going to be to stop the anti-woke people from getting seats in the school council or whatever, school board trustees. So, luckily though, I had a video ready to go for Monday, so I was always excited about that. Oh. Now I just keep on keeping on. And yeah, I guess like last week, the UK went through like a bunch of prime ministers again. That's fun. Sounds like things are going great over there, just saying. Ooh. God damn. All right. My options are guy who thinks the housing crisis will sort itself out and the guy who wants more people to be landlords. Oh, interesting. It does sound like both Toronto-based people running for city council. My options are a handful of people that have put absolutely zero effort into letting you know anything that is in their position. That's my choices. Trying to find the one that doesn't want to increase the police budget. That's about it. Where can you see a list of anti-wokers? I actually don't know myself. I think my wife linked to me an article that was like all of the London school board trustee candidates based on whether they have associations with like weird far-right bullshit. She saw it on Facebook, a place I never, ever, ever, ever go is the thing. All right. I don't know. I guess I could try and find it, but I'd have to like go on my Facebook, and I don't even know where I would start. Actually, I think I know where I could find it. I know who posted it. The only other person who still posts on Facebook is the thing. It's very hyper local that I'm looking this thing up for real. Okay, I can't find it. Never mind. Well, that's going to be the thing that I have to do after this. But basically the choices are, it sounds like the choices are very much down to person who is basically the epitome of neoliberalism versus people who like want to ban every book that's not the Turner Diaries from schools. So on one side, what's it called? The choice is obvious, but on the other side, it's not a great one. I think that it's, what's it called? I think in Magic the Gathering terminology, it's called a forced decision, where you're making a decision you're making a political decision, or in that case, a game decision, not because you want to make it, but because it's the only choice that you can make that won't just like straight up kill you. So it's the same idea. So what is there anything else going on besides the fact that the UK Conservative Party is basically falling apart? I think the mayor candidates we have are like a choice between the liberal who was given his job by being appointed the successor of the last mayor, and a person who like basically just wants to give all the money to the cops. So it's like, okay. Sure, why not? Okay. What we got for... The first question I got here is, have you had a chance to check out Jared Yates Sexton yet? His Twitter has a good sense if you want to dip your toe. Fair warning. I'm about to ask you if you've encountered another person's work. Give me a second to type it. Oh, no. Jared Yates Sexton. Have I seen this person? It looks like I'm following him, so yes. I think I might have been just like a far right researcher. I think somebody put me onto him. I would be surprised. All right. Yo, yeah, Brazil's going to be having its second round of elections soon, right? How's that going? Let's see. Observer say fade Amazon stake. I don't even know what's going on. Can't see anything that's got a bit of what to say about what's going on. It looks like it's going to be pretty close either way, huh? That's depressing. Be great if this was a blowout. Unfortunately, this is going to lead to some sort of like, you know, bullshit narrative of like a kind of fake election thing. Any hot takes for the upcoming U.S. midterms? Not spicy. If I have anything that's close to a prediction, given that this is 6 years since the 2016 election, my guess is that the Republicans are probably going to still not hold the Senate. just because they have a lot more to lose this election than the Democrats do. And I think that the Republicans are going to take the House. That's my prediction, that we're going to deal with a Democratic House, or Democratic Senate, and a Republican House. In which case, I can't remember who replaced John Boehner, but I guess that guy's going to be in charge. And if you thought that Joe Biden was good at doing nothing before, just wait until he has an excuse of the Republicans won't let me do it, guys. And, you know, the Republicans get back on having a platform to just kind of keep pushing weird bullshit. So that's going to be fun. It was going off to, what's it called? The U.S. Midterms were getting to a point where they were thinking that, like, you know, they were thinking that it was going to be a blowout for the Republicans, and then the Republicans fucked the football by getting abortion banned, and that really fucked them up. Slavery is on the ballot in several states. I don't know. It sounds like a 13th Amendment violation, unless it's like some like prison labor bullshit. I don't know. Oh yeah, the British have the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. I don't know anything about Rishi Sunak. I think I remember hearing that he was kind of like a anti-woke kind of guy, but that's about it. I don't really know much about him. But like, congrats, I guess. Or I'm sorry, whichever one best applies. I don't know what his deal is. Ryan was replaced by Kevin McCarthy as head of the GOP in the House. Okay, so Kevin McCarthy is they're going to be the Speaker of the House. Lovely. Well, if you want like a silver lining to it, that means that, you know, that probably means that Nancy Pelosi might retire. If she's not going to be Speaker of the House anymore, she might take that as an opportunity of, hey, I'm in my 80s. Maybe I should stop being Speaker of the House, or stop being the House Minority Leader, and give it to somebody who is not in their 80s. That'd be pretty sweet. And they also, the silver lining is that the House is the fastest one to flip, you know? Since the entire House is up for election every 2 years, it means that, you know, getting the House back is not as difficult as, like, the Senate or whatever. Especially because the Senate, like, the Democrats winning the Senate this time is kind of easier. And then next election, the 2024 Senate elections are going to be much worse for the Democrats. And so, yeah, it could be that they don't, you know, if the House doesn't flip to the Democrats, you could see in 2024 all branches taken over by the Republicans again. And given how hard the Republicans have worked to basically make it so that elections don't matter anymore, I could see that being pretty much it for the Democrats at that point. Allowing churches to become corporations. That's got to be the most American thing I've ever heard in my life. It's a national don't say gay bill floating around the U.S. that would declare the appearance of a trans person as an imprisonably obscene offense. Jesus Christ. Oh, moral panics. They're not good. Yeah, I have a feeling that, yeah, give Sunak a month. Yeah, I don't think the Conservative Party's got much of a shot. I feel like it's, like, not too far away from just imploding. I know that the party's been around for, like, 200 years or whatever, but it does seem like the party's, like, leadership is thinning out really fast, and there's really not much of a step forward, and that maybe a new right-wing party is going to have to take over because the current Tories don't really seem to have anything going for them anymore. But who knows? I don't know. Never count out the laziness of the British people. Whew. Can we be forced to call a general election? Can they be forced to call a general election? I thought they don't have to until like 2025. Do I have any thoughts on the Brazilian elections? Not particularly. It seems like it's in dead heat, and there's some serious, like, worries that because, Brazil has a history of, like, having military coups and military dictatorship governments that Bolsonaro is openly a fan of, so that could be a problem if he decides to just roll with that again. That sort of thing. Red Sunak wants to expand the definition of extremism to include anybody who vilifies Britain. Oh, God. When do you think you're going to do the corrections episode for Probs Not Aliens? I'm kind of thinking of doing like a I'm kind of thinking of making it the like sort of end of the year episode, like the last episode of 2022, and maybe setting up a tradition that like the last episode of every year is like a corrections episode. Feels like that would be a good one. Or the first episode and have it be like a New Year's thing and be like, to get the year started off on the right foot, here is everything I got wrong. That might be a better option, actually. But either way, we couldn't really do much of that last year because we couldn't really do that much last year because last year we were really, really, really far ahead in our episodes, and also the baby was coming. Like my baby was born on like what's it called? My baby was born on like January 6th, so there wasn't a whole lot going on in the whole like last first few days of 2022. So but yeah, I definitely need to make a corrections episode. I feel like there's a good amount of stuff that's enough for content for one episode to, apologize for. What was the second last episode? The second last episode I think I've already gotten called for, which is so because the last episode would be for 2022 would be December 27th, while the second last episode would be December 20th, and I already have an episode planned for December 20th, which is that an episode to celebrate the to celebrate 10 years since the world was supposed to end in 2012. So, in the sense that political pressure would be overwhelming. I mean, since when do the British people give a shit about what the people think? They know that they're going to lose any election that they call, so they might as well just hold out as long as possible. The only thing I would think that would make them actually force them to have an election would be if the party just ceased to exist as an entity, but even so, yeah. Anyways, the next... I wonder how many Y2K alien theories there are. I don't know. I actually don't know. I haven't seen any. My Y2K video is very much about a sort of the American militia movement because it's sort of part of that series. But it's about the American militia movement and sort of an aspect of the militia movement that I've hinted at in the series, but I haven't really delved into, which is sort of the prepper, apocalyptic version of it, and sort of digging into that. Odds of Scotland leaving the UK if Labour gets elected whenever the next election takes place? I could not tell you. I don't even know. I don't know enough about British politics to know exactly how likely that's going to happen. That's going to be. So, anyways, next question I got here is: do you play City Skylines? No, I've never played City Skylines. I mean, I probably should at some point, but I haven't yet. I have the game. I think I got it through some like bundle or whatever, but I've never played it. And like those kind of like Sim City like games. They can be fun, but you know, I have a bad habit of finishing games, you know. I have a bad habit of not finishing games. Right now I'm playing The Witcher. That I've been trying to play. I've been trying to beat The Witcher since like 2019. So finally gonna get back up into that. And I've already gotten distracted by the new RimWorld expansion that I've been playing for the last like 3 or 4 days. And tomorrow, the friggin' new Victoria game comes out, and that'll probably distract me again. So, yeah. Life is all over the place. All right. Let's see what we got next. Been playing RimWorld again too. Yeah, the only thing about RimWorld that I'm like, I've been trying to play it a little bit. Because of the baby, I've been too busy for most of the time, and so I've only really been able to watch a lot of other people playing it. And I'm getting a little bit concerned because one of the things that RimWorld added is babies and reproduction. But this is also a game where you can like, you know, harvest people's organs, take out their skulls, and put them on spikes. And like, for as far as I can tell, there is nothing in place to protect children from those kinds of things. So, yeah. They're gonna get an article written about them at some point, because that is some next level shit. It's like RimWorld's trying to push the envelope again on like horrible things they can get away with because the art is so sort of abstract. All right, am I worried I'll have any falling outs with fellow left-tubers when I finally get around to China in my Brick series? I feel like most of the people who are pro-Russia already long fell out with the rest of the community, but it feels like there's still a strong China can do no wrong vibe amongst people in that space. Maybe? I don't know. See, the thing is, like I'm hoping if there's one thing. So a long time ago, I did a video for the Cold War channel that was sort of about the ideological dimensions of the Cold War. Sort of the way that the Americans and Soviets both thought about concepts like freedom and stuff like that, and like what the ideological struggle was over. And I got a lot of comments saying that it was probably one of the more fair takes on the two different approaches to freedom and understanding of like what they were trying to build. And now I'm trying to do a video on China, and it's going to be complicated because it's happening in the context of sort of this power grab by Xi Jinping, and like you know, China's sort of stepping out into the world in a really big way in the last like just handful of years. And so I mean, I'm going to have to take it. I'm going to have to try to be just as fair as I can. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are like very much into like China can do no wrong for some reason. Which I'm like not super jazzed about. I can't imagine any like left tubers that are actually going to I'm actually going to have a falling out with. Except for maybe like Bad Empanada or something, but that's about it. We're gonna need a playlist of your background music? Sure. His being elected for a third term, yeah. But also, like, basically replacing the entire Politburo with people who are close to him. And changing a lot of the sort of rules of things so that he can pretty much have complete control over the country and be a lot more centralized in his power. And like that's the main like thing that like Xi Jinping's been doing. Like for example, like at the Communist Party thing last weekend or over the last week, freaking Hu Jintao, the former president, got like forcibly removed from the convention by security guards. So there's stuff going on, especially stuff behind the scenes that isn't, we don't know about yet, but it is getting pretty weird. As for the playlist of background music, this is a playlist called Stream Beats. It's the Synthwave Stream Beats playlist. I could just put a link in the chat, but it's basically just Spotify. So if that's what you want, you can get it that way. Somebody asked if they should get Victoria 3 or Crusader Kings 3 first. That depends upon what kind of gameplay you'd like. Like, regardless of the historical era that it takes place in, I would say that Victoria 3 is going to lean harder on the simulation aspect. Now, again, I'm speaking about a game I haven't played before, so this is just what I have seen from the stuff that's around it. But Victoria 3 leans harder on the simulation aspect. And also doesn't have micromanaged warfare, and so it's going to be a lot more diplomacy and economics and possibly being more limited in the things you can do based on the fact that the world works a certain way, and there's going to be less of like DDR Jake like cheesing the system to do some crazy stuff. Although I'm sure people will figure that out. Crusader Kings 3 leans heavier on being a very story-driven game, where the juice of Crusader Kings 3 is inhabiting your character, building your dynasty, and sort of living through their life through various different situations and scenarios and stuff like that. And if that's a thing that you're into, then, go with the gods. So, like, if you had to choose... And also, Crusader Kings 3 at this point, because it's a couple years old now, will be cheaper. Which, is a selling point. So I guess like you have to kind of think about the three different angles, right? Like the three different angles: historical period, gameplay, and price. If 2 out of 3 lean one way, then go with that one, I guess. The other thing too is that Crusader Kings 3 already has a bunch of DLCs, and Victoria 3 doesn't, because it's literally not even out yet. So if you want to just buy one thing instead of all the DLCs, then that's also a thing you can think about. One more lighthearted Probs Not Aliens correction. DDR Jake did the Ryukyu World Conquest in EU3, and he became lead dev briefly for EU4. Oh yeah, I guess that is true. Though I saw I saw him. He did the Ryukyu playthrough in EU4, and I watched him do that. Yeah. So I'm pointing out, yeah, CK3 still feels a little bit like it's young, Like, CK3 still feels like it's still, like, a newer game, and it has less... Like, CK3 is going for fewer but bigger DLCs, and its DLCs are leaning a lot heavier on... It's leaning a lot heavier on deepening the dynamicness of the simulation and the role-playing, which I think is really cool. Like, the idea of hybrid cultures and sort of modular cultures and religions, I think is actually a really cool idea, and I'm glad they're doing that. I think that's a really good thing. Also, the, like, sort of medieval fantasy of holding court and like hearing people's petitions and all that kind of stuff, I think is also a really good DLC thing. You bought the big pre-order? Yeah, I did too. I bought it for CK3 and I bought it for Victoria 3. So I need to go back to Crusader Kings 3 at some point. But first, I need to finish The Witcher. I have been putting it off for far too long. All right. See if we got another question here. I led a reading group at work on Kate Mann's Logic of Misogyny. Good stuff. She provides an analysis of misogyny that centers on those who are impacted by given actions rather than centering on those who engage in given actions. It's motivated in part by what we actually want concepts like misogyny to do for racism or similar other institutionally mediated things. We want the concept to provide action guidance, not serve as a label that applies to individuals. An upshot of this approach is that it sidesteps the whole "I hold no hatred in my heart for anyone" / "my intentions were defense" so often given. Well, that wasn't a question, but that does sound like a pretty useful way to approach it, yeah. EU4 and its DLC really burned me badly. I guess. I didn't play a lot of EU4, I'll be honest. It's probably my least... Well, I can't say it's my least favorite of the Paradox main title games because I never even bought Imperator. I think everyone kind of agrees that Imperator was just a dud of a game. But I did not... Out of the games that I actually purchased, EU4 is probably the one I liked the least. Just because EU4 is the most gamey. Like, it feels like it's the one where I'm the least likely to get sort of absorbed into the story of the game that I'm playing, and instead I'm just thinking of it as like a strategy game, basically. In which, like, you know, I don't like that. I like when I play my games to like get into the sort of like get lost in the narrative of it, and I feel like as a sort of dynamic story building generator, EU4 kind of falls short on that. And I feel like its community also reflects that. Like, its community seems a lot more interested in like treating it like it's like a, you know, plus I mean, it's been a while since I played it, but also I think that its approach to technology and colonization at the beginning was really bad, and I know it's a lot better now, but it's still like, I still think it's a bit Eurocentric in a way that I'm not super happy with. So yeah, I haven't played Europa Universalis in years, and I haven't bought any DLC in a long time. Maybe I should just go take a look. Maybe I'll see what the last... So Europa Universalis 4. E4. When was the last time I played it? Let's see. Let's see what Steam has to say to me. EU4. Last time I played EU4 was October 24th, 2018. Okay. And what was the last DLC I bought? The last DLC... Let's see. Oh my god, I can't even tell you. Oh, okay. Might be Rights of Man. Maybe. Art of War. Emperor. I don't know. Obviously, I didn't buy a lot. Is there anything funky happening in Canada right now that's not being talked about much outside of there? Can't think of anything. Ontario's having its municipal elections today, and apparently there's a weird, like, I just read an article in the Toronto Star about how, like, a lot of school board trustee positions that are up for election are being filled with people whose, like, position is, like, being anti-woke. So that's a weird thing that Canada's having to deal with, I guess. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's, like, really sticking out as, like, a weird thing that's going on. We just recently got, like, Alberta recently changed its premier, and the new premier of Alberta is, like, she was formerly the leader of the Wild Rose Party, which is sort of like doesn't exist anymore. It was like a far-right Alberta political party. And then what happened is that she was the leader of the Wild Rose Party, and she was like an extremely bad, like, she was really into, like, she was a big anti-vaxxer and all that kind of stuff, and she was known for not being particularly that bright and being kind of crazy. And now she's, like, basically she's basically premier of the province by, like, party election leadership bullshit. Yeah. And Alberta's, Alberta's got this, like, weird thing about, like, it's actually, like, trying to get a sort of constitutional sovereignty on par with that of Quebec, which, like, establishes it as its own sort of nation within a nation. And it's like, bruh, Alberta only considers itself that is because it has oil. And outside of that, it's like, you know, any other generic, shitty right-wing Western province, like, if there wasn't for oil, they would not be in this situation, but I don't know. Canada's West has gone fucking insane because their entire political trajectory is on destroying the ecosystem as fast and as efficiently as possible. They will not be happy until every square meter of the country is made of pipeline. And all of it is just funneling as much of the oil out of Alberta as it can into everywhere. Is there any precedent for giving any provinces these powers so they don't speak French? I mean, no. Quebec is sort of special in its own sense because it has an extremely different and not only just linguistically, but it has, like, because there's French speakers in every province. Like, every corner of the country has, like, old French communities. It's just that Quebec has, like, a distinct nationalism in and of itself. It's like Scotland, you know? Except they even have their own sort of. It is the only province where French is the official language. Makes me wonder how much Stellaris I've played. 759 hours. Okay, that's a lot of hours. What'll happen to their economy if the oil runs out? It'll be bad. Because Alberta has, like a lot of countries, when they became rich on oil, they invested in stuff in order to sort of think about afterwards. Like, you know, the UAE built Dubai, and has that whole thing. Saudi Arabia is investing heavily in making all these new cities, trying to develop a tech sector. Norway has like its, big capital fund. But Alberta turned it all into tax breaks, which has resulted in nobody building anything in the province that it doesn't have to do only with oil extraction. And without oil, all it has really is like cattle and some mining. It's not going to do a whole lot. Do Indigenous people have those kind of sovereignty powers? Indigenous peoples, their whole thing is completely different. Because Indigenous peoples aren't really considered, they're not considered provinces within the country. In very much like, they're, like, Indigenous people are not even technically considered citizens of the country. They have, they don't get passports, they get band cards, which are sort of like cards showing their tribal membership, which they can use in place of one. But, like, what's it called? The Indigenous people's, like, reserves are all, they're all managed by the federal government and through the Indian Act, and their whole thing is, like, it's just its own thing altogether. It doesn't have, it's not even comparable, but yes, they do have a lot of autonomy because of that. So, but Quebec is a province, and as such, it has this special stuff that's usually so that it can kind of circumvent the Constitution. They aren't even citizens. Even in the U.S., Native Americans had citizenship since the 1920s. They are, like, they're it's not so much like we refuse to give them citizens, because in many ways, the Americans giving the Native Americans citizenship has a lot more to do with trying to absorb those people into their like system, and trying to delegitimize their, like, national sovereignty, than it actually had to do with, like, any sort of, like, movement towards justice. In Canada, they have a lot more, like, I think they can get a Canadian passport if they want it, but they don't tend to want to get one out of, like, kind of like a thing. Like, the thing is, like, their band card lets them do stuff like cross the American border without a passport, because, like, if you are part of the Haudenosaunee, if you're like a Mohawk or something like that, and you have a Mohawk band card, since Mohawk territory straddles the American border, they are free to go between those two things. Like, that's sort of like, it's the issue that Canada has with Indigenous people is the fact that we have put them on reservations that have very little, like, resources, and they're extremely underfunded and put in locations that are extremely hard to get to, and then their, like, land is extremely, like, what's it called? It's very depleted and all that kind of stuff. It's very, like, resource poor and polluted and stuff like that, and it results in a whole lot of, like, extreme poverty among Indigenous communities. Plus, even if they aren't citizens per se, they can still, like, vote and stuff like that. Like, they still vote in elections and everything. Plus, also, yeah. Let me see. Maybe we did make them citizens at some point. Okay, there you go. Never mind. What's it called? Apparently, I mixed out on this, and they did make them citizens in 1960. So there is that. What if a Canadian Indigenous person wanted to go outside North America? Yeah, then they might have to get a passport. And I guess, and they can get a passport, so. How do native rights in the US and Canada compare? That's complicated. There's a lot of different issues at play, because, for example, Indigenous, like there are, as a percentage of the population, Indigenous Canadians represent a larger percentage than like Native Americans do in the U.S. So like they're a larger group overall. Like I gotta find out how my yeah, 5% of Canadians are Indigenous, so it's it's a larger group than in the United States. Furthermore, a lot of the remaining like strong Indigenous governments in the United States are focused in the sort of American Southwest and like the western part of the country, while in Canada it's still mostly all over the place. Besides that, like America's had historically a little bit more of an assimilationist policy towards them. In Canada, there was definitely like there was the cultural genocide that was the residential school system. That is for sure. Yeah, it's not as different as it should be, I guess I should say. It's just that if anything, maybe the differences are more that I don't know. The answer to this would require I have a bit more finesse over the conversation than I do right now, I guess I should say, is what I mean. Hopefully that makes sense. Trying to think of layers like, because there's also like aspects like cause like every time I'm thinking like, oh, America did this thing and Canada did it, and I'm like, Canada did that too. Like America had the Trail of Tears where like, there's a lot of people who are like indigenous nations to like, like the Americans, Southeast, like, the American South, that then got moved to like Oklahoma randomly. And I'm like, oh, Canada displaced a lot of these people too, so, eh. Did Voyager really ruin the Borg, or is it just being wrongfully shamed? I would say that, ruin is a strong word. I would say a couple things about the Borg, and Voyager. I think Voyager overused them because First Contact was a big success, and so they decided to just like hammer onto the Borg forever and ever and ever and ever, and I think that was it got a bit much. The sort of later seasons of Voyager got a little tedious in how Borg centric they were. The other thing, and the thing is that if there was one thing I think made the Borg a lot less threatening and a lot less interesting, was not done on Voyager. It was the first time it was done was in First Contact, which is actually like a really good movie. But it was the Borg Queen taking the sort of like faceless, the faceless mass of the Borg. Like their whole selling point is that they were like this endless legion of faceless, de-individualized creatures, and then making them have a queen. I don't know, that felt especially because like one of the things they did in TNG was they made Picard into Locutus because they literally like they thought they needed a like semi-autonomous Borg drone that could communicate with the Federation, and even so, they were so alien to understanding what individualism is that basically Locutus was indistinguishable from just being a Borg drone, pretty much. And so that got undermined by having like a Borg queen who seems to have like, you know, a full set of feelings and is some weird seductress and all that kind of stuff. And I think that like, while like I think it was needed for First Contact, because otherwise First Contact didn't really have a villain with a face, and it's kind of hard to tell an action movie about a villain that you can't have dialogue with. I think that I think it could have been done if they had been better writers, but like, yeah, the Borg Queen I feel like did the most damage to like what made the Borg feel really like cool and threatening. And then yeah, later Voyager seasons really like hammered on to like, you know, the Borg being more of like this cartoon villain type thing, and I thought that was a lot of times like it was like a lot of the plot lines of it were like serviceable. Like, I think there was still some pretty good plot lines with the Borg in Star Trek, like in Voyager. Like, I liked the whole, I liked Icheb, and I liked, like, a lot of this sort of plot of, like, the rescued children who were assimilated and trying to, like, make them make sense or try to make them process their own trauma, especially as, like, a sort of metaphor for Seven of Nine, like, overcoming her own trauma of being assimilated. I thought that was a pretty good, like, you know, I thought that was a good plot line. But like, yeah, they'd had this like whole storyline where they set up this Borg Queen as like the villain of the show, and I thought that got very tedious very fast. Especially for a show that's supposed to be kind of focused around a ship being lost, and so it's trying to get home, and in doing so passes a bunch of different people on the way. And they liked the Borg. They were so obsessed with the Borg that they even try to find a way to shoehorn it into an episode of Enterprise, which I thought was weird. So I'm glad though that that the new Star Trek people, when they got the franchise, decided to sort of cool it with the Borg, and they waited until a really good time to introduce them with Picard Season 2. And it seems that the way that they're using the Borg is different. They're making it so the Borg are kind of doing some new stuff, which I think is interesting. Because I feel like it'd be very easy to just make the Borg generic villains of Star Trek. And I feel like they... like one of the better things of a season of Picard that honestly was a bit of a mixed bag, but I feel like the stuff they did with the Borg was pretty cool. I liked the idea. I remember from episode 1, I was like I was really like excited about the idea that like, oh man, wouldn't it be like the most Picard thing for the Borg to be redeemed and for him to find a way to make an understanding with this enemy that seems to be like, you know, this irreconcilable evil. And I was like, and then they did that. Spoiler alert. And it was really good. The Enterprise Borg episode's not bad. It's just, it feels like it's like this, it kind of brings into this whole thing about how like, First Contact happened and it was a huge success, and so then the interpretation that Rick Berman had was that all Star Trek fans want to see is all Borg all the time, and I didn't think that was great. What if the Dominion encountered the Borg? They kind of talked about that, like the whole like there's this whole thought that like Voyager, why did they go the way they went if they like, they could have avoided Borg space if they just went into the Gamma Quadrant and went through the wormhole. That would have been a lot faster to get home. But, you know, they try to set up the two shows as having their own two domains, you know? The movies on the whole are not good. Yeah, it's true. There are a few good ones, but a lot of them are good only as like nostalgia things. Like The Voyage Home is a good movie. The Wrath of Khan is a good movie. First Contact is an okay movie. I actually enjoy it, but I know that it's more enjoyable, I think, for hardcore Star Trek fans than it is anybody else. And honestly, this will be sacrilege, but I actually think that Star Trek Beyond was a decent movie too. That one didn't get as much love as it deserved, I think. The Justin Lin Star Trek movie, basically the latest Star Trek movie, I think, at this point, so. Picard's not my bag, neither is Discovery. I mean, I've been a Trekkie for far too long. I'm like, you know, I will take whatever. I will watch whatever it is that they make. That's basically my take. And are Picard and Discovery my favorite Star Treks? No, they are not. But they're still, like, I think they're still watchable, and I still enjoy them. But I could also understand that if you have less, you know, if you have less diehard loyalty to the genre or to the franchise, then yeah, I can imagine those ones don't really follow very well. That can make sense. Star Trek Beyond, yeah, Star Trek Beyond. I thought Star Trek Beyond was good. It was straight up like a good movie. Like it was written by what's his name, the guy who the guy who played Scotty and was like wrote the Cornetto trilogy. So like it was like legitimately funny. It has like a lot of really good, like it has like some Enterprise callbacks that are like some like good deep lore. I thought that Star Trek Beyond felt like a little glimpse into what a Kelvin timeline Star Trek TV show that never would have existed, but would have felt like. And I thought it felt like it had like the plot of a really good two-parter. No, James Doohan's been dead for like over 10 years now. But the guy who played him in the movies, he was Shaun in Shaun of the Dead. I'm trying to remember what his name is. The Orville is the only good new Trek. Okay, come on. That's not fair. First of all, the Orville is very good. I'm not going to lie on that one. That is a correct thing. I think it's like it is kind of amusing. Like in some ways, I'm always like it's like TNG if it was written by an edgy atheist. But I still think overall it's a really 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 good show. And season 3 was like almost all just straight bangers. I was very happy with season 3 of the Orville. But honestly, like even it like Discovery's rough. It's got some rough seasons. It's got some interesting decisions that I would not have rolled with. But overall, it's like a okay show. I don't mind watching it when it's coming out. I enjoy it. Is the Orville doing a better job at addressing trans issues than Trek? Yeah, in a way, because the Orville did an episode where they actually talk about trans issues. Like, I think that, like, if there's a criticism I have of the new Star Trek stuff, is that it is afraid to do what the old Star Trek did, which was like really interrogate those like really difficult questions and like have that really high concept sci-fi. They haven't. The new Star Trek, like Alex Kurtzman's like concept of the show is very much to do a lot more character-driven, like stories, good characters, but like isn't as it's not as interested in like the high concept science fiction that like, you know, defined like the TNG stuff. The Orville is sort of the opposite. It is it puts way more emphasis into its high concept science fiction ideas, and I think that as a show that does that, it's very, very good, and I like that. But like, you know, looking at the sort of new era of Star Trek, like Discovery has some rough seasons. It still has some interesting ideas going on in it. I like the like sort of 32nd century setting. I think there's some cool stuff going on with that. I liked like that the like Romulans and Vulcans have learned to sort of coexist in a cool way. I think that was well done. Like a whole Navarre plot line I thought was really cool. I liked the idea of like a sort of like post-apocalyptic federation. I thought that was a really cool concept. So, you know, it's not, and also that the like, you know, the big showdown at the end of like the last season was about trying to break a language barrier and understand a misunderstood, like try to clear a misunderstanding, which I thought was like a really cool plot line to go through. Picard also, like the first season of Picard was okay. Had some cool ideas going on. Again, Picard, I feel like feels like it's trying to do too much and too little. Like it feels like it was trying to have, for a show like now the TV shows only have like 10 episodes a season. Picard was trying to do too much in 10 episodes, I think, and it made it feel kind of rushed and kind of like before you knew what was going on, there was just like new characters and new shit happening super fast. Season 2 sort of went too far in the opposite direction, and it was a bit too slow. And it was like, and it realized that like some of the characters are not the most like, not the most solid on the most solid of ground. Like 7 of 9 was obviously really interesting, but like, but you know, like Captain Ritos and Raffi were like really did not feel like they had like a lot of dimension to them, and that was kind of disappointing. But I thought that that Alison Pill was really good in it. I thought Alison Pill and the whole thing with the Borg Queen was really good. I like the exploration of Picard's mother and like really the whole like mental health thing, because I know that was a really personal story for Patrick Stewart. So I really liked how they explored that. But yeah. Like I said, it's a show, and also that it like directly like talks about why Elon Musk is bad. So like, it's not the worst. It's definitely not great. Season 2 of Picard is definitely a rough season, but it has good ideas. And then season 3 looks like it might also be okay. We'll see what happens. I'm cautiously optimistic for it. And then what else we got? We got Lower Decks. Lower Decks is a good show. I have no notes for Lower Decks. It's a genuinely great show. That's why like anyone saying anything after Discovery is bad, I'm like, Lower Decks is a great show, whatever. But also Strange New Worlds was like legitimately good. It's probably closer to like that sort of high concept, you know, story of the week type show that a lot of people were going for. And like, you know, Strange New Worlds is solid. Like it's Strange New Worlds, I think it's not controversial to say that it's like definitely the best of the new Star Trek shows. Like that's not even debatable, but doesn't mean that the other things are like, you know, irredeemable. They're just written very differently than like what, you know, was done before, because that Alex Kurtzman has a very different vision than freaking Rick Berman did. Let's see. Keep wondering what happened to Seth MacFarlane, that he's so much better on trans issues on the Orville than on Family Guy. Like on Family Guy, there's a really gross joke about Brian sleeping with a trans woman and then vomiting when he finds out. Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't know why Seth MacFarlane is like that. The only thing I can think is, just from what I know about how the Orville works, is that compared to Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane has a lot closer control over it. Like, I don't know if at this point I don't know if Seth MacFarlane really does a whole lot of writing for Family Guy anymore, and that the people he might have replaced it with is not the best. But even so, he could have had the power to kibosh things. But yeah, I don't know, or just that I think he has a sort of the whole like attempt to make Family Guy have this irreverent style of comedy. As like a rich white guy who's like, cisgendered, he probably doesn't understand, and not that it's an excuse, but he doesn't understand like why these making jokes about these things, even if like they're not done from a place of bigotry. Like, I don't know, but I think that show actually has the characters like, learning a lesson by the end, but even so, it's like, you don't realize that Family Guy's like watched by kids and they're going to take the wrong impression, and he doesn't really get the whole thing. But yeah, I think Seth MacFarlane is overall good-natured, but very, very blinded by his privilege. That's for sure. Because I do think that in many ways, I think Orville is a better expression of Seth MacFarlane's deeper feelings. Because I think, if I remember correctly, he's got a much bigger control over that show than he does Family Guy now. So I think that episode of Family Guy is like kind of old now too. But yeah, one of the things about the Orville that's really good is that it definitely started as one thing, and he learned very quickly that it was something else. And Seth MacFarlane had very good foresight to realize what the heart of the show was going to be, and leaning into that hard. And even if the show got, if the show doesn't get another season, it would be sad, because I feel like the show really found its stride in the new season that just came out, and that it would definitely benefit from getting some more content. Wow, 52 people are watching me talk for a long time about ship shows. So that's fun. It's obvious, though, from what I'm saying. Like, I've got a huge blind spot for Star Trek media. Like, I will watch anything. What's it called? I didn't even talk about Prodigy. Prodigy was fun. It's definitely not for my audience, but I love seeing Kate Mulgrew playing friggin' Captain Janeway again. And I like that it's like, I like how it's like trying to, because it's for kids, it does the very hard work of being like, how do you onboard an entire new generation to this, like, almost 60-year-old entertainment franchise. And I thought it did that pretty well. When it comes time to introduce my son to Star Trek, I'll probably start with Prodigy. I feel like it's a good place to start. Also, Prodigy came out almost right around the time my son was born, and it was very good to watch something that was Star Trek, but also wasn't super complicated, because I was getting on average like 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, so it was good to, like, not be overly burdened with thinking. Prodigy is pretty good. My son loves watching that with me. Yeah, I think it's good. Like, the thing is, like, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I don't like it, it's for kids," and it's like, okay, that's fine. There's a lot of people online who seem to be allergic to the idea that maybe not everything is for you, and that some shows are just not for you. And sometimes you can enjoy something even if you're not its target audience. You can find ways to be entertained by it. Like, Prodigy is definitely not made for my demographic, and I don't think it was intended to be, but it is nonetheless, like, its writing is way better than like what you see in a lot of kids media these days. Like, a lot of kids shows are bad. That show, like, at least like put some effort into it. Like, I think the only show I've seen that for kids that's sort of like modern in that sense, that's like really put that effort in, was like, it's probably like on probably like that She-Ra show, and probably like a little bit of like the Dragon Prince. I don't know, I haven't watched She-Ra, but I have watched the Dragon Prince, and I know that show had some very good earnest writing about stuff. And I'm glad to see the Dragon Princess coming back soon, actually. But I mean, that's what happens when you get the creators of freaking Avatar to write a show, right? I also do hope, so I do have some hope because also what's going on, I don't know if you guys saw this at the New York City Comic-Con stuff, but Discovery is going into season 5 next year, and it seems that they took a lot of notes from Strange New Worlds' success, and they're letting that influence the writing of Discovery a lot. And so next season is apparently supposed to be a lot more lighthearted. It's supposed to be a lot more lighthearted and a lot more adventure focused. And I think that if there is one thing about Discovery that I like a lot is its characters. Like, very quickly, Discovery set up a cast of characters that are very, and this is impressive given that, TV these days, you get a very, very small amount of time to explore characters because you basically have to tell a plot in 10 hours of footage. So the fact that they were able to make you care about an actually pretty large cast of characters for Star Trek show standards for Discovery is pretty impressive. And I'm glad that they were able to do that. Because now, hopefully in season 5, it sounds like they're going to be having more of an adventure and a fun thing, and that probably means more character exploration and more time doing hijinks together. And with the kind of cast of characters that Discovery set up, I think that'll be really fun because, they have personalities. I really like Doug Jones. Doug Jones's character is Saru. Really like, oh god, I'm trying to remember what the actor's name is. He played Adam in Rent, but he's also Lieutenant Stamets. Is it Stamets? Yeah, the science officer. He's pretty solid. And Hugh, the ship's counselor and doctor, he's also pretty good. That whole little gay family story they had was also really good. Not the creator's director of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh, there you go. Am I still working on an RPG? What's the overall vibe of it? Yes, I am still working on it. I'm making a little bit of progress every day. But basically, I can talk a little bit more about it because I've actually written some stuff now. So, drastic shift in tone, I guess. It's the RPG I'm working on is what if it's a Forged in the Dark sort of D&D game. So it's trying to be... The general pitch meeting I have for it is Dungeons and Dragons has this way that it sells itself as this character-driven, story-rich game. But then when you actually go and read the book and play it, it's a combat engine with a small skill system attached to it. And so I was what if you had a game that had the same amount of overall game complexity, but instead of it all being in combat, you sort of spread it out into all the parts of the game that people think that this game's supposed to be about. And so it's it's got a bit more juice about developing characters and has a lot of the main thing I have is that a lot of the progression system is focused around storytelling ideals. So your character, when you make them, has a need and a want, which is basically the thing that they're out in the world to accomplish and the lesson that they need to learn about themselves in order to accomplish it. And those two things are the way that you gain experience in the game. And also, it has this whole momentum system so that you have more of these this sort of bet for pacing, this sort of it's this sort of, it'd be a poker chip or something like that either the players or the GM would have, and you can use it to give yourself some really big boon, but then when you use it, it goes to the other side, and then they get to use it. And so it creates this back and forth, hopefully a rhythm of moments of, because there's this whole thing about good pacing in fiction is moving between these feelings of hope and of dread, and hopefully that this chip will do that basically. But then at its core skill checking system is all based on Blades in the Dark, which is rolling d6s and then taking the highest number, which I feel like is a pretty, and having consequences and everything like that. Like it's the main. Powered by the Apocalypse system is very good at giving mechanics for roleplay and combat equally. I agree. This is sort of Powered by the Apocalypse adjacent. It's definitely going to be in the Forged in the Dark system, which is based on Blades in the Dark, which is based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. So it's the only thing that's different is that it uses a skill check system that doesn't require addition. You roll an amount of dice, and then you take the highest result, and you get a thing about based on that, basically. Would you ever sell this game, or is this like a for fun thing? Good question. I don't know. It depends upon what. Because the thing is, like, if I want to make it a thing that I actually want to sell, I would have to commission like a lot of art, like thousands and thousands of dollars of art. Because you'd have to like run, and I have to run like a Kickstarter and a bunch of stuff. And like the thing is, it's like my first project, which means that I have no background. I have no like there's no telling the game will be any good. And to make it good, I would need to do a lot of like play testing and then to like sell it, I would need to buy like a lot of commissioned art. And that is a very long and very expensive process for somebody who barely has enough time between taking care of the kid to keep my YouTube business afloat. So we'll see what happens when I actually like write the prototype and see how well people like it. If it becomes very apparent, like very early on when I like test it with a few people, that it's like a really good system and that there's like a lot going for it, then maybe I'll think about investing a lot of effort into it. But if not, I'm happy for it to just be this little thing that I work on and share with my friends. I'm only familiar with an artist that you're willing to work with you to make that more affordable. Yeah, but even so, I would need to pay you what you're worth. And, illustrating a 200-page book is not going to be cheap for anybody. Because, it'd probably take you months of time to do all the illustrations you need, right? So I would at least need to do a Kickstarter to pay for that. And then also, you got to print books and publish them. And you basically have to learn an entire new industry of like the publishing industry. And that would be tough. All right, let's try to see if we can answer some more questions. Hey, so I'm considering a larger personal project next year. What are some good ways to stay self-motivated and avoid being distracted so you can hold yourself to deadlines? I thought you'd be a good person to talk with as someone who's both been a YouTuber for a living and also neurodivergent. Yeah. That's a good question, Matt. That is the main goal for that is to keep your goals in control. Think about intermediate steps. So instead of thinking about the overall project, break it into sort of smaller projects and just think about finishing that project. Because, writing a book is a daunting task, but writing like a 2,000-word chapter is not. And if you think about it that way, and then when you've written a bunch of chapters, all of a sudden you have a book. That's like the way that I would think about it. I know it's a strange thing, but yeah. What's the ideal food for a gaming night, in my opinion? Crudité. Definitely crudité. I run a Blades in the Dark campaign, and almost every session somebody picks up like a sort of grocery store crudité. Is AI generated art advanced enough for that yet? Yeah, probably. And if not, it's not very far away. Let me show you something. I played a lot. I played around with Midjourney a few weeks ago, maybe like a month or so ago, and I managed to make like my D&D character in Midjourney, and this is what I came up with. Let me show you my screen real quick. So like this is the art that I came up with, and I'm like, that's insane. Obviously the eyes are a little weird still, but like the fact that that's an AI generated picture is pretty wild. Does Dr. Oz game with me? No. Midjourney just mushes a bunch of stolen artwork, so good job, Tristan. I mean, I wasn't planning on selling this. I just made it for a random, like I made it for like my like personal D&D game. It's definitely not a thing that I would use for a commercial product. I just was messing around with it to see how it worked for the most part. But yeah, the main problem is that this like AI art just like, you know, takes a lot of to feed, like it doesn't draw originally, it just takes images from a bunch of different sources and sort of fuses it into a sort of average product or whatever. It's still bad? Well, my apologies. Not everyone can afford it. Yeah, well. Anyways, let's see what we got going on. So anyways, what we got going on. Guess yeah, that was the whole thing about breaking down things into projects. I don't know if that was a very useful advice though. The other thing too is that if you break those projects down into like daily timelines, like if I have a larger project that I like am doing that's going to be big, and then I break it into smaller projects. So I usually try to break things down into what steps I want to get done on a daily basis. And sometimes even that's overwhelming, but at least it like lets me know concretely what I need to do, and then gets me that dopamine hit of like, you did the thing that you planned on doing today. Timeline moves along. Do you ever believe that humanity will cure the common cold? Probably. It's possible. Could work. Not 100%, but, you know. Vaccine technology has definitely gotten a real shot in the arm, no pun intended, in the last few years. So I can imagine that it's not an impossibility, given how, like, a universal flu vaccine is something that people have been thinking about for ages. And I'm sure we know, because I know that that coronavirus or COVID is sort of a cousin of the common cold. So the sort of overall structure is in the same vein. So like they probably know a lot more about how it's structured than it did in the past. So I like the pieces exist. I think that if it is possible, it could happen. We're converging in that direction, I guess. What do you think will happen when the GOP gets back in and starts trying to force their culture war shit on blue states? I don't know. We'll see how strong it's resisted. My guess is that there would be given how bad the Roe v. Wade response was, but the Democrats are not going to do shit, but there might be a lot more people trying to get very angry. So I imagine it's going to be a lot of, like, years of big protests and, backlashes against these, like, these crackdowns on people's civil rights, and then backlashes to the backlashes, and sort of an endless cycle as, like, Americans get less and less freedom to live their lives as they see fit. Which seems to be the way that the world's been going for the last, like, half decade or so. The main reason the cola's been cured is because there's a lot of strains and it's more beneficial to help fight the flu, COVID, and other diseases. Yeah, that's fair. My guess is that the cold is going to be more of one of those things that we fix if we either just find a universal coronavirus vaccine, or if there's, like, some sort of medication that completely, like some sort of, like, over-the-counter antiviral that's cheap and effective enough that it could just, like, make pretty much any disease, any virus go away, which doesn't really mean curing it, but it does mean rendering it pretty much useless. Kind of the way that, like, a lot of infections have become sort of the advent of antibiotics has rendered a lot of bacteria no longer a threat until now, because we've overused them, because evolution sucks in that sense. Do you have any thoughts on the interplay between video game consumers who lean alt-right versus game developers who lean progressive in recent years? Been catching up on video games and struck by the alt-right fan service in titles like Far Cry 5, Preppers, Doomsday, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Sparta, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Firm Muscles, Long Hair, God of War, Firm Muscles, No Hair, Death Stranding, Preppers, Doomsday. Is that alt-right fan service? I mean, I know there's sort of like a general vibe of, like, apocalyptic-ness. I guess there would... I wonder how much of that is, like, catering to, like neo-Nazi adjacent fascists, or if it's, like, just a lot of, like, the fact that our culture is still obsessed with a lot of, like, Western stuff that makes our stuff really boring. Because didn't, like, Valhalla... Was Assassin's Creed... Was it God of War? That people were getting mad at it because they showed Thor and they showed him that he didn't look like a dehydrated bodybuilder, but looked like an actual guy with muscles, and they were like, Thor's fat, we hate him, or something. I don't remember. I try to very hard not involve myself in video game discourses because I don't really play video games enough for it to be a thing. But yeah. Do you think progressives will win eventually? Do you think that in the future people will think eating meat was barbaric, so you have that long-term optimism? The answer is I hope so. I think that a lot of these things are tied to... like moments. Like, I think that there's always going to be a sort of reactionary backlash against things that happen, and that it is very easy in the middle of them to think that this is the end. It's just going to get worse from here. But like, people felt that way in a lot of repressive times in history, and time has this habit of keeping moving forward. And I think that the reason why things are so particularly bad right now have a lot to do with the fact that we're approaching the sort of event horizon of the contradictions of capitalism, and it's causing a lot of people to not know what's next, and a lot of people to lash out at who they think is responsible. But yeah. But that doesn't mean that things don't have a chance of getting a lot worse before they get better. How are you able to? How are you able to do much in your Vic 2 Haiti run? I tried it and found myself basically unable to do anything for the first 20 years if I didn't use cheats. I didn't do the Haiti run. I did a Quebec run in Victoria 2, but I never did the Haiti run. I want to do one in Victoria 3, but I have no idea how it's going to go. My guess is not great because, yeah, in the simulation game, playing as the sort of random person is not going to, like, playing as, like, Haiti is not going to be an easy thing to do, that's for sure. How do countries stop being fascist? I mean, for the most part, vigilance. Like okay, so like the countries that came very close to becoming fascist and then did not become fascist. The ones that come to mind are like 30s America and Britain. Britain, I think, mostly pushed back, like, you know, Mosby and his fact by just having a sort of coordinated and anti-fascist response and sort of getting them out of the way. The United States mostly had, because I think that economic class plays, I feel this is going to sound really weird, but economic class plays a larger role in American politics than I think it does in a lot of other countries for some reason. And I think that the New Deal was really what diffused a potential fascist future for the U.S. At least it delayed it until, like, you know, the sort of conservative backlash in the 1960s that sort of has built up until today. And was the USA closer to becoming fascist than becoming socialist in the 30s? That's a hard thing to gauge. That's not like, I imagine that there were a lot more socialists in the 30s than there were fascists in the 30s in the US, but that might be just me not having a strong read on how many like there was the German American Bund. Like, the thing is that in America, a lot of its fascist movement was tied to specifically like ethnic groups. Like a lot of fascists, like straight up fascists in 1930s America, were like German and Italian ethnic enclave type groups. But there was like things like the business plot, which was an attempt for like sort of a corporate, like, or privately led, like, sort of dictatorial takeover to stop FDR's New Deal, basically. And that would have basically have been a fascist takeover. But yeah. I don't know if I think that in many ways addressing it where it is and sort of stopping it in its tracks before it gets too bad has been the most successful. If not, then it's sort of like a lot of fascist movements took a hit when World War II sort of gave it a bad name. And like, I don't exactly want another World War II to happen. That feels like it would be bad for everybody involved. So let's try to avoid that one if necessary. So the main problem, I think it's showing up in the chat, is that fascism has an extremely complicated definition, and depending upon what kind of what kind of definition you want to have for it, then like, yeah, it can either mean like a very specific movement of the far right in the 1930s, or it would mean like every single authoritarian right-wing movement that has ever existed. And I don't know exactly which one is the most useful to use exactly. Because in some ways you could say like the sort of neo-reactionary, like far right movement now is definitely fascist in the sense that it draws direct inspiration from like neo-Nazi movements that drew their inspiration directly from fascist movements of the 30s. like the through line is pretty solid, while like that might, like, to say like the US has always been fascist, like has it acted in ways that are authoritarian? Yes. And brutal? Yes. And done acts of mass violence and systematic genocide? Yes. Is that part of the same historical movement? Like the lineage, is it the same? And that's where things get more complicated, because then it's like, well, yeah, American colonial policies inspired some of the acts of like the Third Reich. Okay. That's, that sort of things get like noodly, because if the US had gone fascist in the 30s, do you think they would have come out of it by now? Like, generally those regimes don't last 90 years, even half that. Yeah, that's probably true. And that kind of gets into the whole discussion about where do we, what kind of fence do we want to draw around such a word? It is a powerful word and references an extremely brutal and violent period of our history, and a legitimately terrifying streak in modern political discourse. And so, how much do you just attach? How much is it like an idea that keeps resurfacing? In which case, it can be traced back very far and has a very broad definition. Or if it's like, do you follow the lineage of this specific movement from like 80 years ago? And I don't have an answer there. But I think a lot of our our problems are like very dependent on like trying to thread that needle. Because I think a lot of not all, but I think there's a lot of disagreement that comes to like disagreement over that definition, I guess. So actually, have I finished all the questions? Definitely looks like it. That's wild. Got on so many tangents that I was like, I guaranteed I thought that we were not going to be able to get it, but... Is there anything else that we... is there any discourse that has not been discoursed? Man, there's like... Oh, I didn't even see AI infinitum. Al infinitum? I don't know. Subscribed with Prime. Thank you so much. Thank you for the 7 months. Much appreciated. I thought I usually get like a ding when that happens, but I didn't for some reason. My what's it called? My my whole Streamlabs setup is all sorts of messed up, so I need to fix my OBS somehow. Now I'm trying to like keep the energy up, but like The chat went dead for a while there. Sometimes I think about how we'd be better today if the U.S. went fascist in the 30s, because when they reformed into a democracy again in the 70s, they probably ended up with a better system. That's a terrifying prospect. I feel like some of that stuff, I mean, like, I feel like if the U.S. went fascist, there's the dynamic of the Cold War would have been very different, or World War II even. So I have a feeling that if the U.S. went fascist, the Soviet Union wouldn't have been as successful without that Lend-Lease program, which would have definitely changed the tide of things. I think another important aspect of a functional definition of fascism as we monitor its development is that co-optation of communist rhetoric and political momentum is a central feature. Yeah, that's sort of, this is sort of all dovetailing into a video I'm working on later this year. I think it's coming out on December 1st. And it has all to do with, like, what's it called? Like, it's having to do with, like, a lot of these labels and a lot of these things are all getting very wishy-washy and hard to really have a strong connection with. And that a lot of, like, our concepts of left-right politics just don't work outside of, like, a sort of age of mass politics that existed in the past but doesn't really anymore. And, you know, even back in the 1930s, there were fascists were, you know, appropriating communist rhetoric for clout. Hence the friggin' National Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, or whatever the fuck the Nazi party was called. And then the fact that, yeah, a lot of communists just, like, got straight up. It seems like a lot of communist movements around the world either became capitalism light or they just got straight up destroyed by the United States. Which means that, yeah, it's not exactly a movement that can really bring itself to fruition like it did in the past. Especially in the U.S. Like, the U.S. Does not have much of an organized left anymore. It's been very thoroughly destroyed. Like, its Socialist Party was destroyed in the 1920s. It's, you know, it's labor movement that organized a lot of American left-wing movements also got shut down in America, especially in, like, the 1970s, 1980s. So a point where labor has basically no political representation anymore. And then, yeah, like the civil, like sort of like civil rights focus of the American progressive movement has sort of moved away from a class-based left-wing thing and moved more towards like a sort of liberal focus, which, I mean, you know, appealing to the sort of ideology of those in power has definitely delivered some goods, but maybe not as much as one might hope. So yeah, hard to see what to hope for, you know. Gosh, I don't want to get depressing. We got to think of something to sort of put this on a positive, you know, a positive direction, you know. Because I don't think that these are, like, I don't, in many ways, like if I were to take like a really classical Marxist look at things, a lot of these things that we're talking about, these political movements and stuff like that, are emergent phenomenon of economic conditions. And that if economic conditions change, so too will the social structures and political movements that we build up around them. And that, you know, like America has had a resurgence in its socialist movement in the last few years as the economy has gotten increasingly stagnant and refused to do much for the ailing classes in the halls of power. Which, if that just keeps going, the people will start, when people's actual livelihoods are under threat, things will start getting a little bit more intense. And that's very, very much like, look at the theory. The theory says we'll be fine. But I think that there's a little, like, the fact that I've been a socialist long enough to know what it was like to be a socialist before Bernie Sanders ran for president and after, I can tell you that a lot has changed. Earlier on in the chat, someone said something about locking up all LGBTQ people in the U.S. Do you think there are too many queer people for that to be practical? Like, I think that's over 10 million people. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely think, though, that you don't have to get everybody, but it's definitely going to target a lot of people, especially people who are visibly LGBTQ, which more or less means trans people. Or, in general, I think that a lot of, like, the trans panic is used also to attack anybody who's basically gender non-conforming. So, fun. Oh my, I think I hear a little gremlin being very angry downstairs. There has been a bit of a resurgence in the labor movement. Yeah, the freaking Starbucks union. Like, I think that there is some eye towards positivity in the near-term future. I literally have a painting on my mantle in my living room that says there is always hope. And, if you look for it, you can find it. There are things still there are still causes worth fighting for, and there are still, there are still things that give you hope that things could get better in the future. And sometimes that's what you need, right? Because, yeah, like, if you don't think things will get better, then you're just going to give in to despair, and it's hard to get anything done with despair. I think there's a Thoughts Line video about this from a long time ago. Alright, I can tell that it seems like things are sort of petering out, and I'm starting to get a little worn out too. So I think we're going to wrap up now. Since I also got to get the kid ready so I can go and friggin', what's it called? Do voting. So let's raid Left Flank Vets, and then I will come back next week. And we'll all have a very good time. Hopefully Mia will be back for that, and then we'll figure out what's going on. But yeah, take care of yourselves. Take care.